Okay, I believe we have Nick and Sergeant. I'm sorry, that would be. Hang on, I don't know who is who. I just had to change your phone numbers really quickly, guys. So, Nick, could you please speak so that I know who's who?
Yes, this is Nick here.
Nick, speak again for me, Nick.
Yeah, Sergeant Kotel's the other number.
Okay, so right here, Nick, I got it mixed up. So we're gonna rename. So here is Nick. Thank you for being here tonight, gentlemen. And Sergeant Kotel, pleasure to meet you.
Pleasure to meet you.
Okay. So let's get some background here for the audience. Nick, you had emailed me because you had a role to play in Benghazi several years ago, and you wanted to let me know about the idea of Operation Red October, something that I think a lot of people were hoping was something that was going to take place. Why don't you give us a little bit of background on yourself, and then we can get background on Sergeant Kotel as well.
Sure. My name's Nick Noe, and I was in the Air Force, and I worked at an Air and Space Operations Center, the 603rd AOC in Ramstein, Germany. And there we had, within our AOR, AFRICOM and EUCOM. And my job was in combat operations. I was the combat report cell, and essentially the entire facility where I worked is a weapons system, and it's the nervous system, per se, of the warfighting effort. So from there, all we had subordinate units that reported to us, and then they were our assets. Yeah.
All right. So basically, you were firsthand witness to the idea that the U.S. government did not want to intervene in Libya, leading to the direct death of American citizens, right?
That's correct.
Okay, that's awful. Sergeant Kotel, what can you tell us about yourself?
Well, I was working at CENTCOM at the time in the Army. I was in the watch floor, early warning and indication floor. And actually, my guys that worked for me had to work for AFRICOM as well, because it was a newly established command, and they didn't have a lot of things set up. So we had to do a lot of intelligence for them, intelligence gathering. We also had to push intelligence to and receive from NATO as well in regards to Libya and some of the areas that AFRICOM was dealing with at that time. We also dealt with intelligence for about, I would say, almost 6 months prior to Benghazi attacks for AFRICOM.
So did you guys have intel on Benghazi, like in the lead up to it? Were you aware that something was going to be taking place on that day?
Absolutely. We were receiving reports from human intelligence and from signals intelligence and other intelligence sources for many months before Benghazi took place, as far as an attack went on 9/11/2012. During that time period, we were pushing that information forward, not just to AFRICOM and to NATO, but to other forces that were on the ground. And the State Department also worked alongside with us as far as going back and forth with information and intelligence. So they were well aware of it. Leading up to Benghazi, about 2 weeks prior to the attacks happening, we saw a rise in very credible intelligence that would signal in what we described as like a checkbox, which is a box that says either key personnel, like key leaders that are in Benghazi, especially the ambassador, are to be removed from that area, and there should be an increase in security. And as these intelligence reports kept coming in, we noticed that these reports got a little bit more damning as we got closer to that date. And instead of security increasing, security decreased. And the ambassador did not leave country, neither did other key personnel. They actually stayed in place, which is against usually regulation on how to handle security protocols for senior U.S. personnel.
It seems pretty strange from a civilian point of view. Can you think of any reason why they would completely ignore all of that intelligence and then make direct actions to put these people's lives in risk?
I can't think of any reason. I can't give it because I wasn't in the leadership roles to say whether they stay or go, why security was lessened instead of increased. I can't say anything factually because that's all I can speak to. But I can say that those check boxes that needed to be ticked for basically a commander's critical intent requirement, they would have had to have been removed, and they were not. And in security was supposed to be increased, and it was not. So I understand that our protocols that we follow were not followed for the lead up to Benghazi, and then afterwards the attacks of Benghazi, which no one could understand that. I mean, all we could do is put in a request, and say what's going on, and we never get responses to that.
That was my next question. Did anybody ask higher ups what the heck was going on?
I know at our level we did. I know that it was pushed forward, but after it left our level and it moved higher, I can't say who said what or what orders were issued or what orders weren't followed. I can't say for that, reasoning, but I know the lead up had a lot of good intelligence information, very corroborated intelligence information that said increase security and remove key personnel. That's a fact.
All right. Real quick, guys, I just need to give a couple of thank yous. Elise said, thank you for all the hard work you do. Planning on seeing President Trump in Minnesota this week. That's probably going to be a lot of fun. B. Dank says, what's up, Red Pill? Signing in from Palm Springs, Southern California. Keep on vaping, bro. I know I will. I certainly will. So during the attack, I'm not really clear on how direct the information is that you guys are getting. You say AFRICOM, CENTCOM. I imagine, like a war room with a bunch of monitors and electronic equipment and, lots of hustle and bustle, people coming and going, phone calls, people on computers. Is that what it's like?
Let me explain to you that. I apologize about the acronyms.
Sure.
I didn't mean to cut you off, Nick. I'm sorry, but
It's okay.
AFRICOM, which means African Command, they controlled Libya and all parts of Africa. And what you have is you have a large coordinated group of individuals. Some deal with intelligence, some deal with operational aspects, some deal with support, some deal with monitors, some deal with UAV assets. It's a huge conglomerate of people in one large room that you would consider to be the early warnings and indications room. And in that room, you have all these monitors, as you described, and you have a lot of information and intelligence being pushed and pulled from other groups like NATO, like AFRICOM. African Command or AFRICOM was not fully established for the lead up to the Benghazi attacks during 2012. So my group at the watch board, CENTCOM, or Central Command, which we cover the Middle Eastern AOR, we had to cover down on that. And that's what we did. And we also had to link into the NATO network and deal with the NATO allies, pushing and pulling intelligence information from them as well. So it was a large consortium of people, obviously, gathering information, putting it down into some semblance of, understanding so that it can be put into a report for commanders to view and hire so they can make informed and good decisions.
All right.
Does that help?
Yeah, definitely. So you've got all this information coming in, and then I imagine you have to push it out to other people, and then you're just sitting there and you have to wait for your orders to come in. What was it like knowing that there's an attack taking place, knowing that you had the ability to foresee it in the run up to it, and then knowing that they were going to allow those people to die? Well,
Nick, do you mind if I start, or do you want to?
Yeah, you go ahead. I'll finish up. I'll come around the back.
Okay. What I have to say is a little bit hard to understand, but during 9/11 of 2012, 75% of Central Command was in what's called a training exercise. The training exercise was known as Internal Look 12. So 75% of us were at work during that evening. When the attacks began in Benghazi, Libya, simultaneously, our embassy in Cairo, Egypt was overrun. During that time period, we were not allowed to stop the training exercise. We had been told through different commanders running through the floors to continue the training exercise, and that the State Department had it under control. We were advised that the Morsi Brotherhood was involved with the attacks in Cairo, Egypt, against the embassy, basically breaking in. And we were trying to allow the Morsi government to regain control, according to the State Department, sending word through our commanders telling us on the floor. And as far as Benghazi goes, we were told that other elements and other units would handle it. And then we were eventually told the State Department had it under control. But we never got to stop the training exercise. And in 24 years of service, I've never seen that happen, not even once.
Why is it?
So it was very...
Why is it that every time something like this happens, there's a training exercise going on? I mean, I have an idea, but I'd like to hear it from you guys, having been in the military.
Well, this is just for Central Command. And I'll give you a construct or an example. In 1992, I was with the 101st Airborne, and we were at a place called the Joint Training Readiness Center, or JRTC, and it was at Fort Chaffee, Arkansas. And that particular training exercise, some guy, some sheikh, decided that he was going to go ahead and bomb the Twin Towers in New York City with a van.
Yep.
As soon as that took place, we stopped the training exercise. We turned in all our blank and training ammunition. We stood ready by what we call PZ posture, with a bunch of helicopters standing by and live ammo ready to go to war. That's exactly what took place. If you translate that to 2012, during the Benghazi attacks, we were not allowed to stop a training exercise. Matter of fact, we didn't stop it for 8.5 hours after the attacks began.
In 2001, wasn't there also a training exercise going on? And wasn't there at least several hours of confusion where people weren't aware of what was real and what was the training exercise? That's
correct. They didn't know whether it was real world or exercise. That's based upon what I've heard from the actual radio transmissions.
Yeah. And I find it interesting. In 2012, again, there's another training exercise, and they don't allow people to stop. It seems like stopping something like that could have, helped people figure out what's going on and, maybe rally the troops a little bit quicker.
Well, a lot could have been done at that time.
We had plenty of assets all over Europe and Africa, completely covered. We had air, land, and sea covering it everywhere. We had pararescue teams. We had F-16s, F-15s. We had drones. We had special forces. We even had Marines nearby. And everyone was basically stopped from doing anything. And, everybody there, for example, the pararescue team that we had that for AFRICOM and an asset, they're ready to go 24 hours a day. And if they have anything wrong, their plane's not working, someone's sick or on vacation, we know about it. Everything was good to go, and all they had to do was leave and go there. And then they can come into even a very a firefight. Even they can drop in, parachute in, set up a perimeter, and that's what they're trying to do. That's what they're there for. And then we also had a ship that was in the Mediterranean, and they had a fast team, and then also Marine Force Recon. And then we also had the regular infantry there too, and they could have invaded the country for all intents and purposes. All right, so that's the issue here. We had everything. We had the intelligence leading up to it. We had all the assets that were there, and nothing was done. The State Department had it, I guess. That's what happened.
Not only that, though, there were NATO allies available too, and they offered assistance. There were some on the ground already there, and there were some at sea. And we were told the State Department declined that request for assistance. They wanted to help our guys on the ground. They had people there. And what Nick didn't tell you is that Nick also had a drone in the air at the time, and that drone was armed with Predators and with the Hellfire missiles on a Predator. So we could have easily taken out mortar targets and other things, which didn't happen either.
This, under my speculation and conjecture, it sounds to me like someone wanted those guys to die. Considering the overwhelming numbers that you guys had at your disposal and the means to have helped them, gotten them out of there before that happened, it seems pretty obvious that this was a high-level operation to make sure that those guys didn't make it out. Now, I've had a lot of people in the audience saying that this was a gun-running operation. I don't know if you guys have any information about that, or if you've heard that from anybody in the years since it took place. But this is a theory that I've heard quite often, is that Hillary Clinton and the State Department were involved with running missiles through Libya. I believe that they were going to people in the Middle East, other bad actors. And that for some reason, maybe they were there in the embassy. Maybe Christopher Stevens was working with the Clowns in America, and they were overrun. Maybe that there was also some type of a computer server there with some information on it. Heard a couple of different things.
Nick,
well, I do know for sure that they got. This is what was going on. So if that was going on, General Valley has verified that there were weapons going through there that were outside of the ones we already provided. During that time, we actually provided weapons from a weapons cache that was supposed to go over to Syria that never made it over there. And so basically, we provided all the weapons they would have needed, and there would be no reason to run weapons through there otherwise. So what were they doing if they were doing that? And supposedly, as General Valley has said, he said, you need to talk to Marty Tory if you'd like to know what was going on with those weapons and where they were going.
Marty Tory, that's the Mad Hatter from Hillary's emails. Q talked about that.
That's correct. I think that's linked to that. I've read that information, but I think that maybe you could try and get in contact with him and see if he would like to explain to you what was going on there. In regards to the other weapons, like I said, they had the weapons that we were already providing the weapons, and they never got over there. They ended up in the wrong hands, apparently. And there's no real explanation for why that happened and who ended up getting those into the wrong hands. So that's a good question to have answered. We just don't have the answer to that.
I'm gonna see if I can find some information on that. Marty Tory.
Sir, I think what we're trying to do is get you the facts.
Please.
Of what took place, and then after that, we would like to go over how we handled the situation when things went wrong, and then after that, we can discuss what the next course of action is. Because I'm trying to keep myself and Nick into the factual report, but the guns and all that are a very interesting aspect of it. But really, there needs to be more factual evidence, and General Valley does have that information.
Okay. We can go there at a later time.
Yes, sir.
Sure.
All right.
But going back to the attack times, after the attacks were completed, we do what's called reflections. We look at and listen into everybody after the attack, see who's talking about it. We had a very good idea of who had that information about the attacks before, during, and after. We also had a lot of intelligence supporting that from signals, phone interceptions and others, as well as human intelligence from people on the ground. And we also had eyes in the sky talking about movements of different groups and different factions that were within that vicinity at the time. After that, a lot of that information was stockpiled and was told that we had to give that information in for evidential review, I would say plus 26 hours after the attacks began and ended. Later on, after it was discovered that the Benghazi committees were formed under Trey Gowdy, in 2014, I provided a roadmap to recovering that information. That information revolves around only facts and evidence, which would be the human intelligence reports leading up to, during, and after, signals intelligence report, global command and control system, affectionately known as the GEEK system, showing where all assets were, land, sea, and air, at that time throughout the attacks. And it would have given an actual factual historical view of what they wanted, to be able to prosecute anybody or to go after anybody that committed wrongdoings. When I gave this information to the Benghazi committee through the Trey Gowdy Republican side, I was told they didn't want it. They didn't want any of it. I also was told when I called the Democratic side, they didn't want any of it. I was called by one of their investigators that advised me that they were not looking for those factual and evidentiary pieces of information. They just wanted to get this over with and done. I also tried to provide this information to various congressmen and senators Kathy Castor being one of them, Senator Rubio being another, and others, FBI and IG, and they all refused to deal with it. Matter of fact, Department of Defense IG told me they weren't interested in it, and they sent me a letter saying, there's no case here, this is closed matter. And this made no sense at the time because this was not the true closure that was required. This was not what needed to be heard. You know, the facts and the evidence still exist to this day. And another piece of this is that soldiers and government employees are all sworn under oath. And part of that oath is to protect and defend the Constitution of the United States, as well as to ensure that people that are in harm's way are given every amount of effort to be rescued, saved, or their remains recovered. Anybody that's able to do that and fails to do it, they're dereliction of duty and they're in violation of their oath. And under military law, that is a crime. So somewhere along the line, people were told to stand down and don't do this and don't do that. Those are unlawful orders. You're not bound to follow those. So we had tried to use the Benghazi matter to go ahead and breach some information to the President of the United States and to respectfully request that he communicates through the Department of Defense to get some of these people, call them on the carpet, and find out why they refused to go in and rescue, who gave those orders, and hold some of them accountable and charge them. The reason being is because if you look at today, President is involved with a large amount of obstructionists within this United States government. So he can't even issue a direct order and have it followed from himself down to the person executing it because there are so many people in that chain that are obstructionists. This type of event would help remove those obstructionists.
Did you guys see what happened today or maybe yesterday? I'm going to send this to you in the chat so you guys can check it out. It's an order for the Marines to be active on American soil in Washington, D.C.
Did not see that, no, sir.
I'm wondering if this ties into Operation Red October.
Well, I saw that. I saw that from the posting. I can't remember. Let me see. What exactly was the website? Does it say at the end? Does it say .com or I think it was Marines, actually from the military.
It's marines.mil. Yeah, if you check the chat in Zoom, I just sent it to you there. It's also on my Twitter. And I suppose that intentionally foregoing your oath to protect the laws and the citizens of the United States, there's no statute of limitations on that, right?
There are none. You are correct, sir.
So they can still pay for it. I'd like to think that is very close to taking place, but that's me speculating there.
It wouldn't take much for the president to issue an executive order to request all the data that wasn't used in any of the committees. Even though people may think it's destroyed, the data actually gets archived to what's called the digital data ball. There's a human intelligence ball, a signals intelligence ball. There's also a geeks ball. All these data balls have these archived data, and it was the same for the State Department. And the reason why is because we should be able to have an archive to look back on to see what happened when, so we can either effectively train people or avoid situations in certain, theaters of operation around the world. These data balls can still be accessed, and the people that are responsible for whatever actions were taken back then are still around. They need to be questioned before things go wrong, and they wind up getting out of things, or they don't get charged at all. Some of these people do need to be charged, though, sir. And that's the whole point. This would help the president in removing these obstructionists, getting them out of his hair. So that when he issues an order, for example, to ICE and says, I want all illegal immigrant aliens to be arrested that are criminals, aliens. And all of a sudden, the guy executing is going to some poor Sergeant Garcia or someone else's house that served in the U.S. Army for 5 years, been deployed to Afghanistan twice, and they're deporting him and his family. So obviously somewhere between the president and the people executing that order, somebody changed something. And it obviously is to make the president look bad.
Yeah, definitely. Gentlemen, I am so sorry. My trackpad ran out of juice. I have to run out of my office to grab a wire to connect it manually. So I will be right back. If one of you wants to talk to the audience just for a brief moment, I'll be back in like 10 seconds.
Yes, sir.
All right.
All right. So sorry about that.
No worries.
Okay.
No problem, sir.
Normally, I've got an extra one sitting here. I don't know what happened. My daughter must have grabbed it. Okay.
And I wanted to add in there too. Whenever Will was talking about an obstructionist, he also, he didn't name all the names of the people there that he had went to. I wanted to say on the air now that I went to Susan Brooks here on the north side of Indianapolis, where I'm from, because she's on the Benghazi committee, and that was after Trump got elected. Because at that point I felt safe and that it'd be okay for me to come forward. And then it was right around the same time. I think it was right after James Comey had been fired because he tried to start a soft coup, right?
Right.
And so I figured everything's good to go. I went over there to talk to her. I called. I went to her office and I sent her an email. And then finally, her chief of staff called me. And her chief of staff immediately tells me that that investigation's over and basically that they were not interested in talking about it anymore. And then I said, I have more information for you. And that's why I came to you, because you're on the Benghazi committee. And then they said, I'm going to refer you to the Benghazi report. The woman, the chief of staff, recited the URL perfectly, almost as if she had it memorized by heart. And she says, oh, here's the URL. And then said, why don't you read that report and tell me whether or not, you have more information. I said, no, listen, you trust me, you don't have this information. Otherwise it would be all over the news. And, and then she said, and then I sounded concerned. And then she's like, oh, well, why don't you call the FBI then? And I said, I paused for a minute and thinking, I can't believe this person just said that to me instead of talking to me. And then she didn't even ask me what the information was. She just basically tried to dismiss me and then shoo me away. So she said, oh, why don't you call the FBI then? And you know what? I ended up calling the FBI. I called her bluff. I called them. But guess what? FBI gave them all my information, name, address, everything. And all they had to do was look me up in Office of Personnel Management. They could look me up, know where I worked, when I worked there, and then I would have information for them. And then they never called me back. And it's been years. Yeah.
That's incredible. I have to think that these people are just so adjusted to all this corruption that's been taking place for so many decades. It's just business as usual. I think people are they expect that Hillary Clinton's going to continue to get away with her crimes. These people, it's not politically advantageous for them at this point to continue to look into Benghazi. And I think that they're thinking about it in terms of political equations, like what's going to get me reelected? Will bringing up Benghazi get me reelected? Well, no, maybe that's not necessarily going to get you a couple of points in the polls, but if you can avenge the deaths of some Americans who it wasn't necessary for them to die, then I think that obviously it's a worthwhile endeavor. I do need to say thank you to the audience. First of all, Crystal Lynn, she said, don't read this while you're talking, but this is for having guests on, knowing you will get demonetized and doing it anyway. Thank you very much, Crystal Lynn. I appreciate the support. Guido Congetti, thank you for that. A Pool, thank you for that as well. Micah D2 said, Marines were activated by because the deep state wanted to stop the Joker movie. Trump has control of the Marines. It was thwarted again. Apparently there was this narrative that there was going to be violence breaking out at the Joker movie. I saw it on Thursday night with my daughter. I just want to say, go see that movie, you guys. It's a great movie, whether you like comic books or not. Also, number 2. Oh, no, I'm sorry. That was the person who just told me to read my super chats. Read my super chats. Who was that? That was... Doesn't say who it was. All right. Sorry. Thank you for that, guys. I needed to get those in. Thank you for the audience as well. So you guys have, you haven't sat on this information. You've attempted to go and take it to people, and it's been kind of to no avail at this point for the aforementioned reasons that I suggested. But what is the next step here with this?
The next step is to ask the president respectfully to do an executive order to request all the data from the 9th through the 13th of that September of 2012, so that he himself can read the data. And once he does, he can see who gave what orders, and he can see what assets were where, and he can see what intelligence reports came in, what signals reports came in. So it's not like overwhelming. And then he can effectively call a lot of these people on the carpet. I mean, some of these people were very senior in the military. Some of them are still in, some retired, and they went to other agencies, or they opened their own contracting companies that do business currently with the U.S. government for contracts. But they're still very powerful, you know, within the government aspects. Now, if they're called on the carpet and some of these people are held accountable, and that doesn't mean just, you know, a slap on the wrist, but that means, you know, exposing, you know, dishonorable discharge or, you know, even charging criminally is required, because you have three factors in this whole mess that nobody's taken into account. Number one, you have the fallen in their families that got no closure, and they're still fighting to this day to get that. Number two, you have soldiers and service members that were on duty, that knew all about what was going on, and were not able to perform any duties to effectively save or help or even enhance the survival rate of those on the ground. And they live with this guilt. Some of them have done some, you know, things with turning to the bottle or drugs, or with, you know, just survivor's guilt, if you will. I mean, they've been extremely affected by this. And number three, we really have to get the obstructionists out of government. Now, since that time from Benghazi to today, some of them are still here, and they're much more powerful than they were back then.
Right.
They have no right to do that. They violated the oath. That's what every service member and everyone that takes the oath for the United States government in any capacity does. They need to follow their oaths. Violation of that oath is a crime, and it needs to be addressed as one. And this could remove these obstructionists and get some kind of justice and closure for a lot of folks, and also allow the president to issue orders that are followed through the way he issues them, not because somebody in the middle wants to change it.
Nick, did you have something you wanted to say?
No, that was spot on. Essentially, that was one of my major concerns. That's why I waited till I got out of the military to say anything, because the same people who actually, you know, had let them die or purposely chose to make sure that they died were still in power. And that's why I could not say anything. I actually, my second base, I didn't really hardly talk to anybody because I was afraid I would say something. And when I got out, I felt like it was okay. And then, you know, the people in Congress give me the cold shoulder, and so does the FBI. And these people are supposed to be protecting and serving us. And they're not doing that. What are they doing?
Just somebody in the chat had asked who was on the show. It is Sergeant William Kotel and Nick Noe, both gentlemen who had information, firsthand information in regards to what happened in Benghazi. And also we're going to be talking about Operation Red October, which is something that I hope is on the way right now or has already been implemented. So how do we get this to President Trump? Are you guys going to start like an organized campaign so that maybe like one of those petitions asking people to sign in and asking him to create this executive order?
We've been trying to send material up to the White House, which has been effectively blocked. Right now, the media is the best outlet. Everybody who listens in on these shows like yours just needs to try to contact the White House, contact IGs, contact the congressmen and senators in their districts. Take that couple of minutes. You can do it online. Let them know that this needs to be open so it can be properly closed. This was an ineffective job by the United States government to get closure to an incident that didn't have to happen. And even though it happened, it shouldn't have gone to the level of loss of life. It's ridiculous to think that could not have been fixed, stopped, or immediately dealt with right there when the first shots were fired. So this does need to be out there and do that, because when people join the military in the United States government, or they join the FBI or other agencies, they have an expectation and a right that they're going to be supported by their chain of command, that they're not going to be left floundering in a situation like our people were in Benghazi. And that, God forbid, but if they did die, that their remains would be recovered and proper burial would be given. They have a right to expect that. The families have a right to expect closure, to know that their family members that lost their lives have done so in good faith for the United States government and for the safety of the people here. Not for some, half-baked mission where they're just left and forgotten and just totally thrown aside. I mean, the committees, they really did nothing. They didn't present any facts or any evidence. They went around everything. They, tap dance all over this thing. One other point I'd like to make, if I could, is that there was another issue going on at that time. This was the re-election time for President Barack Obama. During that time period, when he killed Osama bin Laden, at CENTCOM, we were not allowed to report basically on most of the Sunni attacks that were conducted. And there was a big problem with that. I wrote up a lot of reports. A lot of other people wrote up a lot of reports about it. And then things came out in the news later on about that, which you can go back to Fox News or CNN and others in 2014 and 15. But that was a huge problem. And at that same time, we also had the incidents going on in Syria, which was getting crazy. And in Iraq, the Iraqi government turned from Sunni Shia mixed to total Shia and Iranian-backed dominance. And they were fueling the wars in Syria. And it was getting really hectic there. We had Iraq under control, and then it went out of control. The country of Egypt went nuts and became a Shia-dominant through the Muslim Brotherhood country. And General al-Sisi decided, no, it's not going to stay this way because we can't operate like that. And he took the country back by force. Mm-hmm. So we had a lot of things that were going on during that 2011, 12, and especially 13 time period. And Benghazi was one key piece of that because that was holding information between two different combatant commands, areas of operation. And it was the loss of a U.S. ambassador, which is extreme. So, I mean, there was a lot of things that were happening all at once in this whole theater of operations and this whole time. I mean, we lost control of Iraq. We lost control of Yemen. We lost control, obviously, of our embassy in Egypt and the country of Egypt. We lost control of Benghazi and the Libyan fold. We lost a lot. There was no reason for that. So Benghazi is just a means to an end for the president to understand that he can hold some of these people accountable that played along with following unlawful orders.
All right. Well, we've got almost 4,000 people watching tonight. I think this would be a great start if everybody would go ahead and do that. Contact the White House, contact your congressman, flood people with this request, and also put it on Trump's Twitter as well. Quickly, Ben Schwagel, I want you to ask them if they know anything about serpent seed. Tell them it's from a current active duty Army soldier. This is Ben Schwagel's pet subject. Have you ever heard of the concept of the serpent seed?
No, sir.
No.
Okay, thank you. It's okay if you haven't. Next, Red Pill Doc says, remember how Trump had to go over in person to get ISIL attacked? I do remember that. Lisa Hagen said, have they tried to get this info to Judicial Watch? Judicial Watch has an active Benghazi case ongoing. Also, there is a consolidated text of this info, or is there a consolidated text of this info so that we can get it to our reps?
Consolidated text. Yeah.
Like, is there any type of like online presentation of this interview, or is the only documentation just you guys and your interviews trying to get the word out?
No, actually, I have my copy of my documentation for what I sent to the committee via email and a response, and I'd be happy to send that to you. And that's what I was using as my forte to go forward with the information I had more than that. And remember, there's a lot of this that's classified we can't discuss, but it really does signal a lot more information than what we're talking about.
Whatever you can get to me that I can disseminate publicly, please do. And for everyone listening in the audience, what I'll do is I will upload it into a file sharing service, and then I will put it in the link of this video, in the description, of this video, so that anybody who shares this video can also get to that document with ease. And let's see. Now let's say that if we get President Trump to do that, then perhaps we get to see a resolution to everything that took place with Benghazi. That would be excellent. What's the next move after that?
To hold 3 or 4 as a minimum senior personnel accountable, charge them criminally, and let it be public. The reason you're doing that is because you shut down a lot of underlings that are still leftovers in the government. It'll send a widespread message. It'll give families closure and allow people to see that justice still exists in the United States. And you would definitely put to rest some of the people that are holding guilt in that were unable to act that evening.
I think that would go a long way towards restoring the public's view of the country, because I think a lot of people, even the most optimistic, such as myself, are kind of looking around and seeing what's happening, and it's difficult to imagine, that we're still living in the same country as, what we grew up in, because the people who do the most terrible things are not the people who are being punished.
That's true. That's very true.
I'm really tired of seeing that too.
We need to see a return to the rule of law here in America. And I think that you're absolutely right. Some high-level prosecutions and some public executions are something that would really, really help out a lot of people. Crystal Lynn says it would work for me, and I know that. I think it would. I think it's what a lot of people need.
I mean, just imagine this. I mean, senior people are able to do a lot of things, like get away with, in essence, letting people die, which is tantamount to murder. And lesser people are going to jail for much smaller crimes or much less crimes. I mean, how do you justify, the fact that they want to say, why is it fair that I go to jail, but these people do not? Is it a money issue? Is it a prestige issue? Is it a who you know issue? No. And that's not the right way to go about it. The law is the law, and no one's above it.
Exactly. Well, unfortunately, I think that the way that a lot of prosecutors work, they're prosecuting for particular numbers. They're looking to hit metrics. And if they can let off some pretty big fish who've got money, power, and prestige, while at the same time prosecuting a bunch of, lesser people who don't have access to quality legal representation, perhaps have a lower socioeconomic status or education level, maybe don't understand when they're being railroaded on some charges, or people who are just flat out, completely framed for crimes, because that happens quite often. I think that they're doing it that way because they want to have the appearance of some type of equal justice here in the country. As long as people are being charged and being pushed through the legal system, they can still say that it works. But every single day we hear about a different politician or a different banker who commits some awful crimes that have far-reaching and long-lasting ramifications on millions of people, and absolutely nothing happens to them.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
It's disgusting. All right. Well, tell us about Operation Red October, guys.
Go ahead.
Well, that's just what we're doing here. We're trying to make sure that we get accountability for all the people that have committed these crimes, especially with Benghazi, and how no one's been held accountable. Even to this day, nobody has been held accountable. Not one person, any of it. And there are so many questions that are left unanswered. And the whole reason I even started doing this is I saw an interview on YouTube with Dave Janda and Charles Woods. And after seeing him go on there and talk about how he was lied to at every turn, he has no idea what really happened to his son. I had to get in contact with him. I had to tell him the truth. I had to tell him that it was not just, I don't believe that it was just negligence. There's no way that there's just somebody that was negligent and incompetent. That's not what happened there. And the people who did this to them need to be held accountable. They need justice. Those families need justice.
It seems fairly obvious that there is quite a sophisticated level of premeditation to all of this.
Well, I can tell you that security being decreased when threat reports are going up, that's a problem. Kind of answers your question or your statement that you're making.
Yeah, it's counterintuitive. I'm so sorry. Sorry about that. I think my daughter just got home and the dog's freaked out. That's counterintuitive to think that you guys would be getting reports that there is danger coming, and then for the order to come down that we're just going to drop security and we're going to call off anybody that could actually help. We've had a lot of people in the audience asking how they can get a hold of you gentlemen. Do you have a means of communication that people could reach out to you, like a Twitter profile, Facebook, anything like that, email address?
I believe
Nick, you can answer that.
You probably want to use, have them write to you, but also their General Vallely, he started the Citizens Commission for Benghazi, and it's now, you can email him if you have, any questions. I suppose go to his website. It's called Stand Up for America USA, I believe now. If you Google him, and if it's not exactly right, like I said, then you can Google him and you'll find his website and get in contact with him. He also has a lot more information, and if you really wanted to get in contact with us specifically, I would go through you, sir. Then that way, if there's any specific requests, or if there's somebody, this is something else that we could use too. There could be other people that were involved as well, that were in the command structure, that know what really happened. And if they were, if they work there and they're listening and they've been waiting for this moment, you call in or call you or email, and that way we can get connected, because the more people we have, the better. We've got an airman, Joshua Salmon, I used to work with, and he worked inside the SCIF, the Secure Compartmentalized Information Facility. It was built into the combat operations room in there. So anyway, the more people we have that were working in the command structures during that time that have information, please contact Red Pill 78, please.
And I should say, guys, I know someone who may be able to get you to Judicial Watch, directly to Tom Fitton. So I would be happy to try and help facilitate that, because I really do think that Judicial Watch is doing, some of the most important work in terms of bringing this stuff to light. Certainly with Benghazi, with Hillary's emails, with a lot of stuff with this coup that's been trying to get rid of President Trump since before he was even in office. They've brought a lot of really good information to the forefront. Now, I was able to find the Citizens Commission on National Security. Is that General Vallely's? Is that associated with General Vallely?
Yes, I think that's it. Actually, that's
okay.
right.
It's changed to that now, but you can be reached at Stand Up America. You can see him on Facebook and on regular websites, and I believe the reason we're funneling it through General Vallely is he's tried to collate as much information as he could to produce this back when the hearings were going on.
Right.
And he's still continuing to try to push this agenda forward. And again, the reason this agenda is important is because of two facts that we discussed earlier, one of which is the closure and helping those that have been suffered through this, that were military. And the second part of this is to help the president alleviate the government of some of the obstructionists. And that's kind of the twofold mission on this. We want to make that happen. And I mean, he's still the commander in chief and he's doing the job, and it's not right that people, within that chain somewhere continue to screw his orders up intentionally to make him look bad. And this Benghazi piece is very important because there was never any real closure. So we have a means to an end to get this accomplished. And like I said, it doesn't take but a quick executive order. It's out of his hands for about 30 days. And then when it's back in his hands, then you have people hold him accountable. They get to speak their piece, and then they get charged and move out. And that's it.
Absolutely. It could all be taken care of with a simple stroke of the pen. So just for everyone's information, I've put the General Vallely's website, two websites, Stand Up for America and Citizens Commission on National Security. Those have both gone into the description box. They've also gone into the chat box. And then go ahead and go directly through General Vallely on there, guys, because, he's got actually, I'm on his website right here. We're going to go ahead and take a look at that real quick. And it says right here, Red October operations target the deep state. Red October operations have begun to support our president, defend the Constitution, and to eliminate the deep state. I mean, it's in the end, it's all about draining the swamp, isn't it, guys?
Yes. And like like Will was saying, the obstructionists, these people are career, and all they do is they have their own agenda, and they don't do what they're ordered to do, and everything. For example, like you talked about earlier, it's plain to see that there is a soft coup occurring this entire presidency. And it's very plain to see, and it doesn't take a rocket scientist to understand that. All right, and it's not just obstructionists; they are trying everything they can, and they seem very desperate for some reason to do that, and they're not doing what's best for America. And I think that they need to be held accountable too. You know.
I absolutely agree. I just need to do a couple of quick thank yous here, Nick. Exploding Pumpkin Production says, give us the docs, please. Yes, you can has the docs when we're done here. I will make sure to get them into the description box. Ben Schwagel says that I should direct you gentlemen to watch the previous interview that I did just before you came on with John Paul Rice. It was a great interview, and to watch the whole video here when it's done. John produced a film called The Child's Voice. It's a supernatural thriller about drug use, and I mean lightly about drug use, but mostly about child trafficking. It's a powerful film. And then Lady Warrenon says, do any of these murders fall under war crimes? Do any of the crimes committed during the Benghazi incident, that wouldn't count as war crimes, would it?
Any crime that was committed during any action is under war crimes actions. If it's combative action against the United States government, United States assets, United States personnel.
So if it was found that there was intent to make decisions that would result in these Americans' deaths, then that's what it would be? Because it would be a direct action that way.
If it was U.S. personnel that made the decisions, as we just discussed, to not rescue, then that would be under federal law. Those are federal felonies under, treason acts and other acts.
Okay.
If it's foreign nationals, they'd be under the War Crimes Act.
Okay. Thank you for that distinction. And then Barbara Heath says, get with Field McConnell at Able Danger. Have you guys spoken with Field McConnell?
I don't know who he is. Sir.
He's another YouTuber. Go ahead, Nick.
He's a veteran, isn't he? He's a veteran, isn't he? I've heard of him.
He is. And I think he would love to have you guys on. He's got a very enthusiastic audience. I'll be happy to help make that introduction after the show. Because I think that you guys should definitely speak with him. Then Tanette Booth says, possession 24 months, rape 18 months. Why? Yeah, it's kind of an imbalanced justice system that we've got here.
It goes along with the intent of what the government says is priorities.
Mm-hmm.
If drugs are the priorities, that has a higher penalty. Same thing with the rape and other things. But it should just basically be following the law. The law sets a standard. We don't have to keep monkeying with it and add to or take away from the law. It's pretty simple. I mean, go to this whistleblower garbage that went on with the president just recently. This whistleblower is second and third hand knowledge. Under the Whistleblower Protection Act, the law states it must be direct or coronal knowledge in order to be afforded whistleblower protection status. But that does not include privy conversations between the president and foreign leaders. And if it does, and they're going to say that there's a new law that says it does, he still is not a credible witness, having given hearsay, and he's not entitled to whistleblower protections. So that means that he should be charged with espionage. It's a crime. I don't care how it looks in the media or how it looks to other people. It's pretty much black and white. Why I try to just stick with the facts and evidence of stuff, as opposed to making conjecture or what the will of the people are. The will of the people may not understand what the law is or all the ins and outs of what this person did or didn't do. Does that make sense?
It makes total sense. I absolutely agree with you. President Trump has even said publicly that this was a spy. What's even more obvious about it is that the two stenographers that wrote down the call were from the Clowns in America. The whistleblower themselves is a clown agent. It reeks of an operation coming straight out of Langley. And then you've also got the coordination with Adam Schiff and other Democratic members of Congress in the lead up to it. You have Adam Schiff going to the Ukraine, tweeting about some outrage, some faux outrage regarding the president and Ukraine. And then the intelligence, the ICIG, changes the paperwork that like the day before this whistleblower brings the third-hand information, which was delivered from somebody at the Clowns in America.
But you can't change the law. Okay, the law says specifically must be direct or coronal knowledge of.
Right.
Okay, that's the law. You can't add to it and say, yeah, we can just go with hearsay on this.
Right.
I mean, in what court, any place do you allow that? That's ridiculous. I mean, that means you could just make a phone call on somebody you don't even know and say that this guy did all this stuff because I heard it through the grapevine, and this guy goes to jail for 20 years. I mean, what a travesty that would be. This is the same thing. It's ridiculous.
So what do you think they're trying to do? Do you think that they're I guess assuming that people in the government are going to be stupid enough to just fall for this, or is it that the American public will just fall for it, or that the media will fall for it? Because like you said, you can't change the law. All they did was just change the paperwork. They just changed the language on the paperwork.
It's designed to enrage the American people to say, oh, my God, he committed some kind of act here. We have to go ahead and impeach him. And because the media and all the loudmouths, which is a very small percentage, control the media, they're able to tout their message and make him look guilty. The problem is the president, in my humble opinion, is not executing his authority over responsible media. When media creates things like riots or tensions or causes crimes to be committed, they are to be held accountable because they incited that. No one's holding the media accountable. How can they not be held accountable for doing things? I mean, you have to think about the last 6-7 years of what the media has stated and look at the cause and effect. So the media goes out and runs their mouth about, this is unfair, this is unjust, and we agree with that. And the next thing you know, you have these different named groups. I won't speak about the names of them because there's so many going out and burning or breaking into cars or hitting normal people, that are either Trump supporters or others. But the media is not being charged and held accountable for their actions. And that has to be done. If you're not going to be responsible in the media, then you need to be charged or moved out of the media. That's ridiculous to continue to have this type of thing going.
I absolutely agree.
Insurrection again.
I tend to think that the reason it's happening and they're not being held accountable is because we have a lot of intelligence assets who are actually journalists, and it's all part of the operation. Listen, guys, we're actually out of time. We're at the top of the hour, so I do want to give you both the opportunity to have any final thoughts or anything that you want to say to the audience.
Well, I just want to remind them, please contact anybody. Contact your friends, your church members, your community goers, whoever, congressmen, senators, whatever you can do. But at the same time, I did want to make sure that if you could, sir, send me an email so I can send you that document that I sent to Congress.
Yes, I actually sent you an email earlier, so just respond to the one that I sent you, and then I'll check my email after I take the dogs for a walk.
That's the same email, no problem.
Yep, same email. And Nick.
Yes, and don't forget to write your congressman about, and then also at the White House to have that declassified. If they have the geek system, it's GCCS. If they have that declassified, that would show where all the assets were. And if they showed the SITREP, SITREP, if they have that declassified, that shows where all the assets were to include the naval ships. And then the commander update briefing, if they have that declassified.
Do me a favor, Nick. When you write to me, send me those instructions so that I can include those instructions in the description of the video so that people know exactly what to say.
All right. Sounds good.
All right. Thank you so much, guys. Thank you for being here. I want to have you guys back in the future. We will definitely do an update, and hopefully this is going to get some movement for us. We've got 4,000 people watching right now. So thank you to you guys. Thank you to my audience. Thank you to the last 2 Super Chats. Micah D says they are now holding them accountable. I think that they are, but it's just slow going. And Ben Schwagel just wanted to say that you guys should look into Serpent Seed, and then it will make sense afterwards. So we'll talk more about that off the air. So thank you to the audience. Thank you to all my mods. Thank you to everybody who donated. Remember, if you want to support the program, there's always links in the description of the video below. You can always like and share my videos, and that will help. If you are not subscribed, please consider subscribing. make sure to share this video on all your favorite social media platforms after the show. So that's all I got for you tonight, guys. Thank you very much for being here. As always, this has been Red Pill 78. I am the Corruption Detector, and this was your Red Pill News for Saturday Night Livestream. Good luck, everyone, and God bless. Hey guys, it's Red Pill. I just wanted to say once again, thank you very much for supporting my channel. If you want to, there are links in the description of this video below for several different ways that you can help out. Also, don't forget that when you support my sponsors, you are supporting the channel. Without them, I would not be able to keep doing the work that I'm doing. Also, if you are not already, please make sure that you are subscribed to the channel and that you click that notification bell to make sure that you get notifications every time that I do put a video out. And you can also follow me on Twitter at RedPill78. So thanks again, you guys, and I'll see you next time.